the three. King launches underhand, misses. Rebound, Rose off balance. Yes! It's a buzzer! Jalen Rose wins it! Jalen Rose wins it! Oh my, at the buzzer! Rose, the fall-away jumper, and the Wolverines win it! 79-78! Do you believe it? Weber still with it, down to 3 on the shot clock. Rose straight away, down to 2 on the shot clock. Pull up jumper off balance, no good. Rebound, King up and in with 1 second remaining. Jones holds on his left hip, starts to drive into the paint. Rose intercepts, he steals it, anticipated. Rose, alley-oop to King, slams it through! King with the 11! 66-58 Michigan, their biggest lead of the ball game at the 2:45 mark. Jumps top of the key, drives down the lane, knocked away from behind. Jackson fighting for it, knocks it up to King. Now Rose left guard. Rose driving into the hole. He is hammered. Basket count! Ford grabbed him around the neck, and Jalen still hits it. Rose with 16. Still looking. In it comes Martinez. Blocked by Weber. Throws it up in the air. 1-2-1. Long three off the mark. Michigan's in the national title game. They have done it.
Michigan basketball, 1993, the Final Four Showdown.
A lot of great memories were made inside that building, and if you were lucky, you got to see some of them. I did. I'm Mitch Albom, sports columnist for the Detroit Free Press. And what I saw inside Chrysler Arena this past season at times left me laughing, at times shaking my head in awe. The Michigan basketball team, with its Fab Five freshmen, had promised to shock the world in 1992, and it did, reaching the NCAA championship final. Their challenge as sophomores was to go one step further. This is a story of an incredible collection of basketball talent trying to do the hardest thing there is in sports, top themselves. In this video, you'll see highlights from the 92-93 season, including the showdowns with Duke and Indiana, the Rainbow Classic in Hawaii, and that incredible NCAA tournament run. In my opinion, there has never been a group in college basketball quite like the Fab Five. Weber, Rose, Howard, Jackson, King. I found them so unique, I spent the last couple of years writing a book about their experiences. That'll be available in the fall of 1993 from Warner Books. In the meantime, this video should provide many a highlight moment, and you'll see headlines from the Detroit Free Press reminding you of just how unique a season this really was. Exhilarating, fast-paced, heartbreaking, goosebumpy. Maybe the adjective that describes it all best is fabulous.
In what would be an historic year at Michigan, the Wolverine basketball team would rise to the height. 31 victories, more than any other Michigan team. A second straight trip to the Final Four, their third Final Four appearance in 5 years. All-American honors for Chris Weber. All Big Ten honors for Weber, Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, and Jimmy King. All Big Ten academic honors for Rob Pelinka and James Bosco, and the Walter Byers Scholarship for Pelinka. It was an historic season indeed as this team stirred the emotions of Michigan fans across the state and basketball fans across the nation in another incredible run of achievement and excellence in collegiate basketball. Expectations. If one word can be used to describe the University of Michigan basketball team heading into the 1992-93 season, expectations was the word that would not escape the Wolverines as they prepared for the upcoming year. Whether real or perceived, welcomed or not, expectations were lofty indeed for Michigan basketball. National broadcast media commentators and national magazines were touting the Wolverines as the can't-miss team for the national title. Never mind the Big Ten, never mind the regular season. Take Michigan to the NCAA tournament and let them take on all comers. That was the perception. That was expected. The reason for this high expectation was the previous year. Michigan's celebrated freshman class had come together at tournament time and had gone all the way to the championship game against Duke before losing. It was unheard of. A freshman-dominated team, 19 years old, had made it to the brink of the national championship. As soon as that NCAA final in Minneapolis was over, every basketball expert in the country and most non-experts had made Michigan the favorite to win the national championship in 1993. Wolverine head coach Steve Fisher had more than just basketball to coach. He had perceptions and expectations to deal with.
It wasn't good enough for them to go out and win. They had to do it in a fashion where it was like a pro team playing a junior high team. You almost knew it was going to happen given the scenario when they came in and all the hype and getting to the Final Four the previous year, but I'd never ever dreamed that it would be what it turned out to be.
With everyone expecting blowouts every game, Michigan opened the season on the road and ranked #1 in the country. In Houston against Rice, the Wolverines came away with a 75-71 win. It was considered somewhat of a disappointment. They had only won by 4.
Hard fought, and we get a tough 4-point victory, and it was right from the very first game, what's the matter? Why aren't you playing better? And it was a situation where Rice maybe played the best game all season in their opener against Michigan because it was Michigan who they were playing. So I think if you draw that bullseye on our back, it was there, big, broad, and everybody was taking shots at it. And that doesn't happen all the time, but it happened all the time, every game, all season for our club this year.
Game 2 of the young season would answer a lot of questions. Michigan would meet their non-conference nemesis, the Duke Blue Devils in Durham, North Carolina. It was a rematch of the national championship game of the previous year. It was an opportunity for the young Wolverines to pay back the Blue Devils for the title game loss. But it would not happen. Instead, Duke would beat Michigan by 11, 79-68. Bobby Hurley, Grant Hill, and Thomas Hill all hit for double figures. Michigan played well, but not well enough. And this one would teach the Wolverines a lesson about pregame comments, because a quote by Chris Webber during an interview prior to the game may have been a contributing factor to the loss.
The question was talking about guards, and he made a statement that there's no guard I'd rather have than Jalen Rose. I'd rather have Jalen Rose than Bobby Hurley. And it just came out. And Chris is not afraid to make a statement. It wasn't meant as a put down to Bobby Hurley, but it came out that way. It came out like Chris was condescending to the Duke team, the two-time defending national champions, and putting Hurley down. So we had criticism heaped on us. And Duke went out and made a highlight tape on some of the things that they showed that Chris had said, headlines in some of the papers. And I think that was fuel for the Duke team.
Following the Duke loss, the Wolverines, with a valuable lesson learned, answered the critics. In the next 5 non-conference games, the Wolverines went unbeaten. The average margin of victory was 21 points. The starting lineup of the 5 sophomores, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, Jimmy King, and Ray Jackson, were taking care of business. They were answering critics. They were playing ball. They were building to a non-conference climax that would put them right back in the national spotlight. In a word, they were impressive. The non-conference schedule climax would come better than 5,000 miles from Ann Arbor. Michigan traveled across the Pacific to Honolulu, Hawaii. It would be there that this team would answer all the critics. They would later ask any doubts how good they could be. The Hawaii Classic boasted the strongest field of any holiday tournament in the country, and Michigan took dead aim on the title. Top 20 Nebraska fell 88-73 in Game 1 of the tournament, and then the Wolverines took dead aim on the big boys of college hoops. North Carolina and Kansas loomed on the Hawaiian horizon, and the Tar Heels were the first on the docket. Dean Smith's teams are always good, and this one was no different. Led by 7-footer Eric Montross, North Carolina was considered a Final Four caliber team, but then again, so was Michigan. It would be a titanic struggle between these two giants throughout the contest. Michigan would suffer the biggest blow early in the game when starting forward and defensive specialist Ray Jackson would go down with a separated shoulder. But despite the injury, the Wolverines didn't miss a beat. They were deep enough to play through the injury, and play they did. It was back and forth throughout the game, with neither team able to land a knockout blow.
Phelps driving in. Pull-up jumper over Weber, misses. Rebound Montross. Fakes, goes up, slams it through with the right hand. Eric Montross with 4, 6 unanswered points for Carolina. The baseline left Reese. Goes up over Riley. Taken away by Juwan Howard. Takeaway. Jimmy King to Rose. Touch pass to King. He'll slam it through. Jimmy King. King down the left side. Over to Jalen Rose. Launches long to Weber. One-hand slam. Flashes across the baseline. Oh, my.
Finally, it came down to the end. It appeared as though the only way for either team to finish it was with a buzzer beater, and that's exactly what happened.
Rose across the baseline. Montross helps out. Air ball. Rebound. Weber gets it back. Now taken away by Ronald. They knock it long. Pulled down by Rose. Michigan with the final possession. Rose launches a long one to Weber, who slams it over his head. 27 for Weber, but Carolina. Williams right at midcourt. Stands out there with 5-1. He wants the 5-second call. Starts to drive in. Launches underhand scooper. Won't drop. Yes, it does. Williams gets the shot. He has 13. Now Carolina intercepts back to Howard. He looks at the clock with 9, 8. Plenty of time. Howard over in the corner. Jimmy King down to 3. King launches underhand. Misses. Rebound. Rose off balance. Yes! And the buzzer! Jalen Rose wins it! Jalen Rose wins it! Oh, my! At the buzzer! Rose, the fall-away jumper! And the Wolverines win it! 79-78!
Jalen Rose finished with 22, but none were bigger than the final two as the Wolverines get the victory against the Tar Heels. Michigan had less than 24 hours to enjoy it, though, because in the finals of the Hawaii Classic, they would meet Kansas. The Jayhawks were another team with Final Four stamped all over it. They had a tremendous guard tandem in Adonis Jordan and Rex Walters, and Michigan was coming off a pair of emotional, knockdown, drag-out fights the previous 2 nights. Plus, the Wolverines would be without starter Ray Jackson. Would they have enough for a 3rd straight night? You bet they would, as Weber, Howard, and Rose made sure Michigan's trip to the islands was both fun and successful.
Rose backs it out with 25 on the shot clock. Lob it down baseline to Weber. He gets loose and slams it through. Chris with his first basket of the night. 24. Right side it goes to Pearson. Long-range three-pointer air ball. Tally rebound. Rose ahead of the pack all alone. He gets a perfect pass and slams it through at the other end. Rose with the basket. He's got 10. Double team on Rose. Cuts to the right side. Needs help. Works through it. Howard all alone. Baseline goes up. Lays it in. He'll go to the free throw line. Jalen Rose swings his fist through the air. The Wolverines got it where they wanted to. Down to 3, 2. Right side Pearson. Long-range jumper misses off the iron, and the game is over, and Michigan has done it.
We played great there. And it was, you look at that field, 3 Final Four teams, Jim, in one tournament the same year. In Michigan, Carolina, and Kansas, I don't think that's ever happened before. And we beat 2 of them to win, and I think that when we did that, we gathered some national respect.
With that national respect in hand, Michigan was ready for the Big Ten Wars and their run at a pair of titles. The 2 titles were the Big Ten crown and the national championship. But first came the Big Ten, and Purdue would be first on the hit list. The Wolverines would see the Boilermakers' Glenn Robinson for the first time in this game, and he would be all they bargained for. The sophomore lit up Mackey Arena for 30 points on the night. He did it from long range, and he did it from in close. But the Wolverines did it more often. 5 players scored in double figures for the Wolverines, led by Chris Webber's 22. And Purdue, even with Robinson, couldn't match Michigan's balance. And the Wolverines opened up the conference campaign with an 80-70 victory. Michigan stayed on the road to beat Wisconsin by 23 and complete their first league road trip with a pair of victories. And they moved back to Chrysler for a showdown with the Indiana Hoosiers of Bob Knight. Indiana was expected to challenge Michigan for league supremacy, and this one would go a long way in determining who would get a leg up in the race for the Big Ten title. The much ballyhooed game lived up to its pre-game hype. It was one of the best college basketball games of the year, with 2 excellent teams raging at each other for 40 minutes.
Baseline right, spinning Nova, works on Weber, gets it up off the glass. No, Weber fights for the rebound and gets it. 4-on-1. Weber to the right side, Figure rolls it up and in. Chris Weber has 8. And it's 43-40. Michigan 7 unanswered points to close to within 3 at the 16:28 mark. Baseline right, Chaney. Three-pointer on the way. In and out, no. Rebound, Juwan Howard. All of a sudden, the Wolverines have come to life. King down the right side. Baseline right, Rose. Drives on Bailey. To the hole. Slams it through. Jalen Rose with 13. And it's 43. They are setting some tough back screens for Mr. Chaney. Henderson underneath the Chaney. Fall away jumper. Got it as he fell down. Chaney has 20. 74-73 Indiana. 2:46 left. Rose right side. Weber sets a screen. Rose pull-up jumper baseline right. Someone got a hand on it. It was Graham, but Rose still hits. He's got 19. 75-74 Michigan. 2:25 left. 14 on the shot clock. Greg Graham left side down to 1:40 remaining. Right side Henderson squares with a 14-footer. He got it again. Allen Henderson with 22. And it's 76-75 in favor of Indiana.
After an incredible 39 minutes of non-stop excellence, Michigan had a chance to win with a buzzer beater.
Hustles across midcourt, cuts to the left side. Rose bobbles the ball, spins it back with 7. Rose back to the left. Over to corner, Voskuhl squares for the 3. Misses. Rose rebounds. Weber gets it. Blocked by Henderson, and Chaney rebounds, and that's it.
So I don't know that it should have came down to that last shot, but I mean, two great teams meet. Comes down to 1-point ball game. I just didn't come up with a shot.
I use this also as maybe a little analogy after the game. Allen Henderson, whose cousin, Robert Henderson, played at Michigan. Our fans had been on him. He runs up and down the sideline after the game, gesturing to our crowds, to our fans, screaming, "How do you like us now? How do you like us now?" A few more choice words as they run off the floor. Had that been Chris Weber, I said afterwards, when people were talking about the perception of our team, rather than our winning the game the way Indiana won it, the storyline would have been, look at Chris Weber. This is typical of what you see out of Michigan. When in reality, it was just and I didn't resent what he did. It was just a kid extremely excited about winning a huge game for Indiana. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's how it was portrayed in that instance. If it had been us, and when it was us, doing similar kinds of things, Jimmy King later on in the tournament, turning after he dunked and smiling at a guy, that was the storyline. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way the whole season went for the team this year.
The Wolverines bounced back from the loss to Indiana and posted 4 straight wins that included a non-conference triumph over Notre Dame and 3 league victories over Minnesota, Illinois, and Ohio State. Iowa City was Michigan's next stop, and tough Carver Hawkeye Arena proved to be another stumbling block for Michigan. The Iowa Hawkeyes, in a swell of emotion, following the tragic death of their teammate Chris Street, knocked off Michigan in Iowa City 88-80. One statistic in the game stuck out like a sore thumb. The Wolverines outshot Iowa, they out-rebounded them, and they had more assists. But Iowa outscored Michigan from the free throw line 30-6. The Hawkeyes attempted 30 more free throws than Michigan, and that was the difference, and it hurt.
It was a little frustrating, but, you know, like we scored like 3 more baskets than them, but they had like 18 and 19 more free throws, so, you know, we wasn't able to balance the free throws off, but, you know, it was a good effort by Iowa.
The Wolverines bounced back from the Iowa loss and posted 3 more victories that included an emotional 73-69 win over Michigan State in East Lansing. The Spartans gave Michigan their best shot, but the Wolverines showed the maturity they may have lacked the year before by taking every Michigan State run and answering back. It kept the Wolverines on a collision course with Indiana, and the Wolverines had payback on their mind. At Assembly Hall in Bloomington, winning is a tall order. The Hoosiers had climbed the national ranking and were rated as the nation's #1 team. It would not be easy for the Wolverines. But in one of their most dominating stretches since they arrived in Ann Arbor, Michigan took it to the nation's top-ranked team.
To Jackson topside. In the paint, Weber pushed out. Left side, Jimmy King. Three-pointer on the way. Gets it. Third three-pointer of the game for Michigan. Baseline right and over. Underneath Chaney. Knocked away by Ray Jackson. Picked off by Jalen Rose. Right side, Howard. Howard going in. Pull-up jumper down the lane. Juwan hits it. Count the basket, and he is fouled. Howard right guard. Topside, Chris Weber. Left wing to Rose. He'll square for the long 3. Gets it. Jalen Rose with the long three.
Despite their first half run, Indiana had pulled to within 2 at halftime. But in the second half, Michigan continued to set the pace. The Hoosiers stayed close, and going down the stretch, it was shaping up to be a great finish when the bottom dropped out for the Wolverines. They went through a 5-minute stretch where they couldn't buy a basket.
The other way, Weber, baseline left. Wanted to go inside, can't, cut off by Nover. Out to Jackson, no, way over Ray's head. And if Indiana gets to it, it'll just be an over and back. They don't. Michigan turns the ball over. Back out to King. Back to Howard. Evans steps around in front, picks it off. Now Cheney has it. Ray Jackson's just fouled out. The Wolverines coming just a little bit unglued.
Despite a furious comeback in the closing moments, including some heroic three-point efforts from Chris Weber, the Hoosiers held on and beat Michigan by a single point, 93-92. It was a low point in the season of very high expectations.
I think that's, you know, we was trying to get out on the break instead of just trying to stay in as a team and rebounding. And I think that definitely, you know, hurt us because, you know, we need to get the rebounding outlet run.
Even in defeat, this valiant Wolverine squad couldn't escape the critics. And after this second loss to Indiana, Jalen Rose's comments gave the doom and gloom guys more ammunition.
He just made a statement that I think was doing what I said, was helping to try to immediately not go in reverse. And if you're not careful, you get going in reverse when you start feeling sorry for yourself. You move on. And he was just trying to say, hey, it didn't happen. We wanted to win it. But there are bigger fish to fry. So let's go about the business of doing that.
Losing to the Hoosiers, the Michigan team regathered their confidence and played out the rest of the conference schedule. They were focusing on the postseason. While they were finishing the business at hand, they were also getting ready for a bigger task, the run to the Final Four and a date with high expectations. In their remaining 7 regular season games, Michigan marched to victory in every one. In 2 instances during the run, they were forced into overtime, once by Illinois in Champaign and again by Michigan State in Ann Arbor. At Illinois, it was Jalen Rose who saved the day.
Rose wants to go on Taylor, can't, goes baseline left, forces a jumper, hits it off balance. Jalen Rose has 17. We're tied 83-all.
And against Michigan State, it was the timely defense of Chris Weber in the closing seconds that kept the Wolverines on track.
Down to 15 seconds remaining, tied 76-all. Wyshynski starts to drive on Jackson. Down the lane to the hole, blocked by Weber. Pulled down by Stevens, blocked by Weber again. Calls timeout. Weber with the block and pulls it down. 5.1 seconds remaining.
In both instances, the Wolverines won going away in the overtime. Maybe their focus on the tournament was the reason for the close call. Maybe they were just playing out the string, waiting for the big show. Whatever it was, they still won. As a matter of fact, they were good enough down the stretch to warrant a #1 seed for the NCAA tournament in the West Regional. Entering the tournament, Michigan was probably the most criticized 26-4 team in the history of collegiate basketball. Some called them underachievers. Others called them too cocky. Not the most popular team in the country, certainly, but also maybe the most misunderstood. They were young men who believed in themselves. They believed in their abilities and capabilities. They went into the tournament publicly stating that they intended to win it. Some would call that cocky, but the young Wolverines didn't look at it that way.
Well, even if we were cocky, you know, what's wrong with it? I mean, you know, if you have confidence and you cocky in yourself, you know, it might could take you a long way, but if you don't feel that way, you know, no one's going to have that for you.
I won't call it cockiness. No, we just want to be the best at whatever we do. And, you know, your parents tell you that, you know, that's how you've been brought up, you know, just to be the best wherever you do, and that's what we're trying to do.
It's no different from asking a student if they're going to graduate in 4 years. They're going to say, yeah. And even if they're getting bad grades, they still want to graduate. Even if we're playing bad, we can still win a national championship because we play hard. It's just like studying. We work very hard at it, so we have a 1 in 63 shot just like the other 63 or 64 teams that are in there. So if our chance is just as good as anyone, we might as well put the confidence on ourselves.
The Wolverines took that attitude to Tucson, and Coastal Carolina would see the confidence of Michigan up close and personal in Game 1 of the '93 tournament.
Rebound Carolina, decked away by Rose, picked up by Weber. One step and he'll slam it through. Rose with the knock away, Weber with the grab, and he'll slam it. 13-7. Howard now to Rose, down the lane, to the hole. He'll slam it through. Jalen Rose, his first basket, 17-9 Michigan, their biggest lead of the first half. Out to Jackson, Rose straight away. He'll drive down the lane, spin move, nowhere to go. Baseline right, Jackson all alone, reverse layup. He gets it. Ray Jackson has 12. It is 27-11 Michigan. Jalen, baseline right corner, Pelinka squares for the three, moves in a couple of steps, forces baseline right, hits it, he'll go to the free throw line. Rob Pelinka again, that scooper in midair.
The Chanticleers had no chance against Michigan. The Wolverines roared to a 35-13 lead out of the gate. At halftime, they led by 19. And while Weber, Howard, and Rose were doing their thing against Coastal Carolina, an unsung member of the Fab Five was embarking on his own personal trip to glory. Ray Jackson, probably the least celebrated of the Michigan starters, was proving he belonged with the others. Jackson was a demon on defense, which was no surprise. But he also unveiled his overall game by knocking down his jump shot from the perimeter. Jackson emerged from the game as Michigan's leading scorer with 19 on 8 of 12 shooting. Michigan emerged from their opening test in the tournament with an impressive 84-53 shellacking of Coastal Carolina.
You know, when first time I was open, Chris told me to shoot, and I hesitated. But the next time it came around, I just started putting it up, and it was feeling good. So I took that couple of shots, and they fell for me. It helped my confidence. Once I hit it, you know, and I saw they was sagging off, it boosted my confidence, you know, and I waited for my shots and took good shots, I think, and they went down for me.
The journey now moved to phase 2. Tradition-rich UCLA would be the next obstacle. Michigan was heavily favored entering the game, but UCLA was on an emotional high and gunning for the upset. As a matter of fact, gunning is about the right description for what the Bruins did in the first half against the Wolverines.
Baseline right, O'Bannon from 18 and hits it. No, making a three-pointer. O'Bannon's third three-pointer. He's got 17. Right baseline tally. Back out to Pelinka, intercepted by Tarver. He's off to the races. He'll go up and lay it up and in. Tarver has 10, and Michigan's got to take a timeout, and they will. Now Dempsey will square for a three uncontested. Gets it again, his third three-pointer. He's got 9, 52-33 in favor of UCLA.
In an incredible performance, UCLA shot 70% from the floor in the first half. From three-point land, they were an astonishing 7 for 8, which translates to 87%. It was a shock. Michigan was getting blown out. But the Wolverines started their mission impossible with a little more than a minute left before intermission.
Eric 1 of 2 from the free throw line. He shoots 1 and 1. Eric misses. Rebound, Ray Jackson. Spins in the lane, goes up, lays it up and in. Ray got the roll. He's got 11. 52-35. Michigan down by 17 with a minute 15 remaining. King starts to move now with 12 seconds. Bosco baseline right around O'Bannon. Finger rolls up. No. Tapped by Riley and in. Eric Riley with a tap in.
The turning point in that game was with a minute 20 to go in the first half. They're 19 ahead with the ball. And Big Petrushka took a bad shot. We score the next 6 points. We score 6 points in a minute 30 when we should have only had one more possession to cut it to 13 at halftime. I was elated going in at halftime. And I told our team that. I said, we should be down 20. The way they played, we should be down 20. Let's peck away and not try to do it individually, but you have to make sure that you play with the fierceness that gives us a chance to win. And the first 10 minutes, Weber just threw everybody on his back and carried us back into the game.
Howard starts to drive. Scoops to Weber. One-hand slam. Weber has 20. 62-53. Michigan down by 9 with 14:39 remaining. King holds over his head. Baseline right corner. Pelinka looks low to Jackson posting up. Gets loose. Forces up a jumper. No. Rebound. Weber back up and slams it through. Chris Weber has 22. 64-55. Michigan down by 9. Ray in the paint to Howard. Back to Rose baseline right. Rose across the baseline. Shovels off to Weber. He'll slam it through. Chris has 25. 66-62. UCLA. 10:15 left.
At the end, I think if you watch that game, you take your hat off to how hard our kids played to take it into overtime. You remember we've got the ball out of bounds, tie score, Jalen trips or gets pushed, as he would tell you. They get it, and it looks like they're going in for a layup. Jawan steps up, and out of nowhere, Jimmy King comes and makes an interception to save a layup that would have won the game for them. And Jimmy King ran from mid-court to underneath the basket in about 2 seconds to get that interception, which saved the game for us. And we go on to win it in overtime, and terrific win.
Terrific win indeed. In overtime, Weber and Jackson were the key guys leading the Wolverines toward redemption. But for the final heart-stopping finish, Jimmy King stepped front and center.
King holds the ball high over his head, and it comes to Weber. Hands it. Nope. Weber still with it. Down to 3 on the shot clock. The Rose straight away. Down to 2 on the shot clock. Pull-up jumper off balance. No good. Rebound. King up and in with 1 second remaining. Jim Herrick is still living on the sidelines, and he's being held by his assistant. Baseball pass up court. It comes to O'Bannon. 5 seconds, 4, way off balance, off the mark. No, and Michigan moves on. Oh, they have survived UCLA.
The play was for Jalen to come off a pick, get the ball, drive, try to get fouled, and score a layup. And it had worked to that point. He just missed a shot, and I tried to get position and tip it in.
It's the year of the upsets, but I'm not going to be one of them. And I wouldn't have came to Michigan to play with 5 soft starters and 16 soft players and 3 soft coaches. I came to play with a bunch of people that had a lot of heart, and I think we showed that.
The Wolverines had survived a scare. They had stared eye to eye with defeat. They had lifted the heavy weight of expectation off their shoulders for the moment and had brilliantly come back from the brink of despair to revel in victory. They would now move on. Seattle would be their next stop, 2 victories away from their dream of returning to the Final Four. When the Wolverines arrived in Seattle, something else had changed. Michigan was suddenly the villains of the tournament. The crush of national media representatives called them overrated and underachievers. Sure, they had struggled against UCLA, but the Bruins had played a great game, and Michigan still prevailed. Apparently, that didn't matter. The image that was being pumped out of Seattle was that Michigan was the bad guy. The critics got even more vocal as Michigan took on George Washington in the regional semifinals. The Wolverines exploded out of the gate and led 15-2 over GW. It would be a blowout, and most expected it. But the Colonials weren't in the Sweet 16 on a gift. They were good, and they came back against the Wolverines. At the half, Michigan was only up by 2, 35-33. The critics were out in force. Michigan was playing down to the level of their competition. They weren't giving GW credit. They instead blasted Michigan. The second half was the same as the first. The pesky Colonials stayed with Michigan, and with 8:11 to play, they actually had a 53-50 lead. But from that point, Michigan regained control. They did it from inside, and they did it from outside.
Rose hustles down the other way for Michigan. Cuts to the left side of the court. Baseline left corner. King squares for the three-pointer. Got it! Jimmy King with the 3 baseline left. He's got 10. Backs out in the corner. Double team on Chris. Underneath, Howard spins on Brigham. Up off the glass and in. Juwan Howard has 50. 58-54 Michigan. 5. Jalen back to the left wing. Down the lane. Underhand scoop off the glass. Rattles in. Count the basket. Oh, my. They're going to give him continuation that time. Jalen's free throw. Rolls won't drop. Rebound Dare. Knocked away by King, picked up by Weber. Fakes, goes up, slams it through with the right hand. Weber has 14.
And the other key for Michigan in the win was offensive rebounding. They out-hustled and out-fought the Colonials, particularly Ray Jackson and Jimmy King.
Season may be riding on the line here. 1:28 remaining, 64-62 Michigan. Weber taking his time. Eyes it, flies it. No good. Long rebound. Ray Jackson in the corner. Big rebound, and he's fouled by Holland. Second one is up. Rolls. Doesn't drop. Rebound. Riley fought for it. Out of the pack. Jimmy King in the corner. King double team trap. He can call timeout, and he does. King smartly takes timeout as he had a...
When it was over, the Wolverines had prevailed 72-64. They were on their way to the regional finals against Temple, and joining them would be their critics. The George Washington game only fueled their opinion, and they hounded the Wolverines into the regional final.
So if the people who criticize us can go out there and play against them and beat them, then they're right. If they can't do it, don't criticize me. Our team's a good team. We won tonight. There are millions of people that want to be in our position. You know, we're 20 years old. Don't criticize me about not being focused. I'm having fun. I'm focused. I won. I play 2 days from now. How many other people can say that? I'm enjoying myself, you know. I'm just playing the sport I love. This isn't my job. I'm not getting paid for it. So you can criticize me all you want, but I know a lot of people have us in their pool to win, too.
Michigan was very capable of handling the critics, but they had no idea what Temple coach John Chaney had planned for them, although Steve Fisher admits he should have seen what was coming based on a pregame press briefing by the Temple coach.
Chaney made reference to how Chris Webber was going to be defended, and he challenged publicly the player who was going to guard him. You're not going to let Webber dunk on you, are you? You're not going to let Webber dunk on you, and almost intimidated the player into nodding and saying, no, I'm not. And that was the scenario of the game. I didn't even know how vicious, and I don't know if that's the word I should use, some of the play was. But it was very apparent from the very beginning that they were not going to let Chris Webber get a shot. He went one time in, and this was intentional, if you ask me. He didn't go for the ball. He went for Chris's head and took a piece of Chris's head, knocked him down. If you're going to get whiplash from a fall, he should have had it on that. There was a no call. There was a no call. He made the basket. There's no call. I'm up screaming. I'm up screaming an intentional foul. And Chaney sees me do this. He jumps up, and if he hadn't been restrained, he'd have come down and taken a swing at me. Every four-letter word you could utter, he's uttering. And then our players later on made statements that he's telling them to take him out, deck him. Don't let him, you know. He's saying, hey, they're holding us, they're doing this, they're doing that. If he does it again, deck him, take him down. And Juwan Howard, who I think has respect for everyone, made that statement that he lost respect at that moment when that happened.
Despite the goonish play of the Owls, Michigan stayed poised and battled Temple evenly in a tight game. But with about 5.5 minutes to play, Michigan decided to end the war and send Temple home. The Wolverines closed out the game with a 17-6 run that Chaney and Temple could not answer.
Howard, baseline right corner to Webber, underneath Ray Jackson. One dribble, fakes, goes up, off the glass, it is! Count the basket, Ray Jackson! Oh! King three-pointer on the way, off the iron, no. Rebound Jackson, Webber gets it right side, fakes, goes up, slams it through with the right hand! Webber with 13! 64-58 Michigan, 3:09 remaining. Starts to drive into the paint, Rose intercepts, he steals it, anticipated. Rose, alley-oop to King, slams it through! King with the 11! 66-58 Michigan, their biggest lead of the ball game.
When the final buzzer sounded, Chaney couldn't accept the fact that he had been beaten. Instead, he continued to rail on Michigan. He didn't like their style. He didn't like them, period. And yet, it was Chaney who had blown his cool, not Michigan. Coach Fisher responded to Chaney's charges and discounted them without appearing to be too upset. But in hindsight, Chaney's tactics during the game and his post-game outbursts deserved more.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I was too much the politician. Maybe I should have taken off the gloves and have challenged the statement stronger, because I do. I challenge the statements that he made about our team as not challenge, I take offense to it, because it's not, absolutely without reservation, is not true. Our kids did not taunt. They played hard. They played physical. They played winning, disciplined basketball. And I think it showed. It showed in the fact that the technical foul that they got, that John Chaney got, was a factor in that game, a big factor.
That victory put Michigan right where they belong, in the Final Four. Michigan entered the festivities in New Orleans as the most criticized 30-4 team in the nation. For some reason, even though they had made it to the Final Four for the second straight year, they were dubbed underachievers. The Wolverines took that label with them into the national semifinals against Kentucky. The Wildcats had beaten everyone in the tournament by an average of 31 points. and they were the odds-on favorite to win the title. They were also installed as 7-point favorites to knock out Michigan. The Wolverines felt underappreciated and a little like they were backed into a corner. That is when the spirit and pride of the Michigan team took hold. But before the spirit and pride took over, a history lesson had to be taught.
In 1990, I was not forceful enough to tell our team, you can't run for 40 minutes with Loyola Marymount. Our kids looked and they nodded. They accepted what I said. They heard me, but they listened, but they didn't hear. And we got beat by 30 points. I said, we're not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let that happen. So we bruised some egos off the get-go and made some role definitions against their press as to how we were going to attack it. That as the week went on, I'm glad we had a week to prepare rather than 2 days for Kentucky. First day they were mad when I said, if they score, throw it to Jalen, and if we can't throw it to Weber for a dunk or a layup, we're not going to shoot it. They looked at me like I was crazy. But they did it. I said, it's not that I don't have confidence in you, but I don't want to get into an up-tempo game where all of a sudden they get 10 straight points because we run down and take the first good shot that we can get. If they miss, you run like crazy and try to score any way you can. That's normal. That's business as usual. If they make it and they press us, do what I asked you to do. Do what the coaching staff says will help us win. Get it in. Try to attack to Weber to get in a layup. If you don't have it, roll it back and run a set play. And I think Jalen Rose, kind of because Jalen had the ball so much, but we executed that thought process about as well as you could, and that coupled with terrific, terrific defense got us really a tough, hard-fought victory. Great, great victory for Michigan.
The Kentucky victory was achieved thanks to a brilliant game plan, team effort, a focus on defending Kentucky's three-point shooters, and pride. Michigan had it all.
And it comes King, right to Jimmy King, turnover Kentucky. Up to Howard, got away with a walk, right side King, to the hole, fakes, goes up, lays it up and in! Jimmy King, first basket, and misses. Dumps top of the key, drives down the lane, knocked away from behind. Jackson fighting for it, knocks it up to King, now Rose left guard. Rose driving in, to the hole, he is hammered, basket, count! Ford grabbed him around the neck, and Jalen still hits it. Double team trap on Jalen. Hustles up court to Weber, right guard. Now to Howard at the free throw line. Weber down the lane. And a call of foul. Count the basket, Weber. And the foul against Kentucky.
The game went into overtime thanks to a referee's no call on Jalen Rose's effort to end it at the buzzer. But it didn't matter, because in the overtime, the Wildcats' brilliant Jamal Mashburn fouled out. Michigan's Ray Jackson and Chris Weber then took control, erasing a 4-point Kentucky lead and leading the Wolverines to the promised land.
Over to Rose, right wing. Now to Jackson. Grasso on him. Jackson down the lane to the hole. Got the basket, and he is fouled by Martinez. Count it, Ray Jackson. Michigan down by 1. Jackson, baseline right. Weber spins, and Martinez goes in. Got the shot. Weber has 27. Michigan leads by 1, 79-78. Shot clock, though, turned off. Still looking. Here comes Martinez. Blocked by Weber. Throws it up in the air. 1-2, 1 long three off the mark. Michigan's in the national title game. They have done it.
Everyone was saying, well, Michigan are their team that's only concentrating on style, but we show people that we're a team that's concentrating on defense and winning ball games, especially in tough situations. A lot of people picked us to lose, and I'm just glad that we proved a lot of the people wrong. And I just thank God because the feelings that you have on the court. I mean, it was like, I swear, it was like somebody like Eric Riley just riding on my back the whole game. And after we won, it was just such a pressure taken off because I watched the shows, which I shouldn't have did. I read the papers, which I shouldn't have did. And everybody picked us to lose. And, when I tipped the ball up at the end, it was like, the championship's game not guaranteed. I'm not thinking about that. But at least we made it back to the championship game. That's what matters to me.
On to the finals and a date with destiny in North Carolina. Michigan would enter the final against the Tar Heels as the 2-point underdog, despite the fact that they had beaten Dean Smith's Chargers earlier in the year. It shaped up to be a great game, and it opened just that way. North Carolina started fast and built a lead, but Michigan answered the Tar Heels with some long-range sharpshooting.
Rose looks low. Pelinka straight away. Three-pointer on the way. Rob gets it. Rob Pelinka with a three-pointer. King brings it down court for Michigan. It's 4-2. Right side Weber. Back to King. Down the lane. Left side Rose. Fakes. Pelinka far left corner baseline. Squares for another three. Gets it again. Rob Pelinka with a second straight three. across the timeline. Left wing to Rose. Rose another three-pointer on the way. Gets it! 3 straight threes by Michigan!
It was a monumental tug of war. But throughout the first 20 minutes, and in the midst of some incredible basketball, Steve Fisher was not completely happy.
I never ever had a comfort level the first half. I thought we were trying to go too fast, and there's a difference between being quick and fast, and we were trying to go too fast in the first half. Even when we got on our 10-0 run and made some threes, I never as a coach got a relaxed, good feeling about how we were playing. So we were down, I believe, 6 at halftime, and I told them that you've got to make certain that you relax and don't try to do things too fast, because that's what we're doing, especially at the offensive end. Part of it was Carolina. They played terrific, aggressive defense to try to force us into a little bit of a quicker pace than what we wanted. Second half, I thought we did a much, much better job of controlling the flow of the game.
Still, North Carolina enjoyed a 6-point halftime lead. But with Michigan playing more under control, their grit and determination would not allow them to let this title get away. Every Michigan player dug deep. In the second half, slowly but surely, the Wolverines reeled the Tar Heels in.
Baseline right corner, King. Spins on Phelps across the baseline. Short jumper, gets it. Jimmy King has 9. Jalen across the timeline. Takes it to the left wing. Goes baseline left to the hole over Montross. Got it to drop. Jalen Rose has 9. 53-50. Michigan down by 3. Williams got it. Down the lane. Oh, looked like he drug his pivot foot. Nothing. Weber steals the ball. Weber off to the races. Here we go. Chris goes in. Slams it through. Weber with the steal and jam. He's got 15.
As this classic NCAA final went down to the wire, no player was more dominant than the Wolverines' Chris Weber.
Right baseline, I go to King. King starts to drive, slips, spins, wants to go low to Weber, does. Double team on Chris. Gets loose, reverse layup, got it. Weber has 19 points. To the Howard high post right, alley-oop to Weber, slam it through! Weber with 21, and Michigan leads 60-58.
The only guy Carolina had answering the Weber challenge was little Donald Williams. He was doing it from long range, and thanks to him, the Tar Heels clung to a 72-67 lead in the final minute. But Michigan wasn't about to fade.
Right side, Jimmy King. Baseline right corner, Ray Jackson just inside the three-point arc, and he hits it. Ray Jackson has 6, and Michigan will use their final timeout.
The Wolverines then pressured Carolina in the inbounds and forced a turnover. Guess who made the Tar Heels pay for the mistake? You got it, Mr. Weber.
Jalen holds high over his head. Moves in a couple of steps. Three-pointer on the way. Rose misses. Rebound, Weber fighting. Goes up from the right side and got it.
It was now 72-71 Carolina. Michigan fouled and put Pat Sullivan on the line. He made the first. Michigan was down by 2, but certainly not out. What followed at this point in this game was bizarre and heartbreaking for the Wolverines. And for Chris Weber, who had performed brilliantly, it was about to become a 10-second nightmare that would last a lifetime.
Sullivan, Krauts, right-hand flip, misses. Rebound, Weber. Weber covers it up. They're down to 18 seconds left. It's a 2-point ball game. Weber brings it down court. They wanted to travel. Weber to the right side with Phelps on him. Weber in the corner. And now he's called what? Michigan can't take a timeout. They don't have a timeout. I don't think. What is the call here? It's a technical foul on Michigan. They took a timeout.
Can't happen. But it happened. And it's almost, this is, maybe I shouldn't say it, but if it had to happen to somebody, probably should have happened to Chris, because of how great a player he is and the great game that he had, and his ability to be able to weather that. He has, and he will continue to, but it should never have happened. And I also need to make certain that when it happens and for a lot of reasons. One, it happens with me in charge. So if a problem occurred, then I'm the guy that needs to step up and take responsibility. Yes, we told them that we had no timeouts, but maybe we didn't tell them and look each of them in the eye and tell them, hey, we got no timeouts. And maybe we didn't do it to the degree that you had to that would have prevented that from happening. I don't know.
Nobody will ever know, but what will go in the record books is a 77-71 win by North Carolina over Michigan in the NCAA title game. What will be remembered, though, is the timeout. And to be perfectly honest, blaming the entire game on the timeout is wrong. A fantastic game, a fantastic performance, forgotten. The timeout that never was, sadly, became the only point of interest in a game for the ages.
It's not fair to North Carolina to talk about the championship that they won as that being the reason that they won it. It wasn't. They played terrific, and so did we. So give them their dues. They played and won the national championship. We didn't lose it. They won it, and I think that's how it should be viewed. Maybe by many it will be, but unfortunately by some it won't be.
Michigan's valiant Wolverines were heartbroken. They had answered all the critics. They had taken more than their share of abuse and had once again stood on the brink of college basketball immortality, only to have their star-crossed season end with an emptiness deeper than ever before. This star-studded highlight season also has a postscript. Chris Webber, the young man who carried his team on his broad shoulders and lived with the high expectations, and who was the high-profile leader of the Fab Five, had a decision to make. That decision would determine whether the Fab Five would continue to exist. Would Webber turn pro and leave Michigan after just 2 years as a collegian? Or would he stay and make another run at a national title with his celebrated classmates? Steve Fisher was caught in the middle. He would love to have Webber for another year, but he also knew Chris was ready for the NBA. And at the same time, he was involved in the decision-making process.
I think Chris made the decision with as much facts as you could possibly get, and with the logic that should go into that decision. So you respect it.
The decision came just over a month after the NCAA championship, and it wasn't unexpected.
I decided to turn pro. Just a decision that I felt was necessary for me to keep going and to move on. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm ready for the next level. I just think the decision came. I talked to Coach Fisher and to Coach Watson, to my family, and prayed a lot about it. And I feel it's just the right decision right now.
Webber's decision was met with understanding everywhere. Turning down the pot of gold isn't easy, and Chris Webber will now realize his dream of playing in the NBA. He doesn't take an NCAA title with him, but he certainly leaves Michigan with memories that will last a lifetime. There is no question, Chris Webber is special, and he's particularly special to Michigan.
He's charismatic, he is a great, great player, but most important, the type of person that he is has allowed him to put a huge mark on Michigan basketball in 2 years. Without reservation, had he stayed 2 more years, he would have gone down leaps and bounds the greatest basketball player that ever wore a uniform here. No question. The accomplishments that he has had in 2 years are, without reservation, absolutely fantastic.
Moving on, Webber also leaves a major hole in the Michigan basketball team for next year. But it's also a challenge to those who remain behind. An era has ended. A new era begins.
The Fab Five is no more. Even though the Fab Five will live on in infamy for Michigan basketball, Chris is gone. I'd love to have him back. I mean, there's no question we're gonna have a huge hole that will be impossible to replace. We'll go on. We're gonna have a very good team, but it won't be the same team. Can't be as good without him. But we'll see. It will make for the kind of interesting season. It'll be a different season, one where the excitement of the unknown re-enters, a lot like when they came in. Boy, I wonder what they're going to be like. Right now, I'm wondering, what are we going to be like next year without Chris?
The only game most will remember from the past season is the title contest with North Carolina. The only point the historians will recall is the timeout that never won. But those who remember the greatness of this Michigan team will remember much, much more about this team. Remember the comebacks against UCLA and Temple, the stunning victory over Kentucky. Remember the effortless grace of Jimmy King flying through the air with a smile on his face as if celebrating the game while slamming home 2 points. Remember the determination of Ray Jackson, fighting for rebounds and making sure he put them back in the basket no matter who stood in his way. Remember the solid, steady play of Juwan Howard, who always seemed to stay out of the spotlight, but never stayed out of the action. Remember the almost carefree, stylish play of Jalen Rose, who never seemed to be involved until he was challenged. And then the heart of a competitive giant emerged to make big shot after big shot. Remember the seniors on this team, who had to give up their starting jobs to 5 young men they didn't even know, and yet with no animosity, they welcomed the kids and formed a team with a bond of unbreakable loyalty that marched to a pair of NCAA title games. And remember Chris Webber, the spiritual leader of this group of talented young men, who brought us to our feet with incredible skill and talent, who celebrated his game with smiles and emotion, who stood up front and answered the questions and faced the critics with courage and grace. This Wolverine squad certainly was something to remember. They did not lose anything. They just didn't win their last game. In the truest sense of the word, they are winners. They overcame the odds. They overcame their critics. They overcame their opponents. They overcame leads. They overcame their own doubts. They traveled the road to New Orleans and overcame the upset. They are Michigan, and they are winners.
Hope you enjoyed that video. Personally, it makes me want to work on my jump shot. Should be interesting watching the 93-94 Wolverines try to top themselves yet again. One of the best ways you can do that is follow them in the Detroit Free Press, which covers the team all season long. Don't forget to look for the book on the Fab Five in the fall of '93. And until then, we'll see you at Chrysler.